Two, one. Well, welcome back to my podcast, Raw Insights. I'm Joshua Smith, and today we're here with Brody Huff and Abigail Gorden. If you guys want to give a brief introduction yourselves.
I'm Abigail. I am 21. I'm currently an intern at Leaders Academy, and I'm originally from Texas, but I'll be moving here. That's about it.
I'm Brody Huff. I'm 20 years old. I'm also an intern at Leaders Academy right now. I've lived here my whole life. I hadn't always gone to this church, but I've been going for the past 3 years. It's changed a lot in me.
Today we're going to be talking about what ifs. That's my title, and I feel like that's just kind of a question on a lot of young people's minds nowadays is what if, they're thinking about the next step or whatever they might be thinking, they have like certain doubts or not. This is always like, what if? And, the first thing is like a lot of people, they try to think about their career path, that they're the next step they're going into, and they get caught up into that. They're always like, oh, well, what if it doesn't work out? What if I, don't get the job and whatnot? And then they kind of miss out on what God has for them in the moment that they're in.
Yeah, I would say oftentimes, because, going out of high school and then wanting to get into college and thinking that I had to do something big and knowing that I had a lot of potential, but then like rushing into that, when in reality, it's like the Lord is taking time to cultivate you, I think is a big part of being a young adult too, of like, you're not just going to get your break right off the bat. Like it's really developing your character. And a lot of the time the Lord's plans are slower than our plans, but that doesn't mean that it's any less fruitful.
Yeah, I can speak to that for sure. I overthink on everything. So for the past few months, it's been like, what the crap am I doing after this? But I don't try to plan out immediately after this. Like, let's plan out 5 years in ahead for no reason. So I'll get hung up on like, am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? What am I going to do? And then I'll get worried about it. But we just had a class here, and the chapter in the book we were reading was talking about how you're not going to find your purpose until you find your people. Like, I got these people around me, so some of them might be my people, whereas I don't have any clue what I'm doing. So I'll just focus on them and try to figure out which ones I'm going to be around forever, and then go from there.
Yeah, definitely. A verse that I like about that is Isaiah 41:10. Says, "So do not fear, for I'm with you. Do not be dismayed, for I'm your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." And I think that's really great. Like I know I struggle with it. I can't speak. I struggle with it a lot. Is like I'm always thinking about, what am I going to do after this, or where I'm going to be, who I'm going to be with, who's going to be around me, whatnot. And that kind of caused me for a while to kind of go through like a little a stage of mundaneness where I was just kind of, I was like, well, there's nothing to do. I've been worrying about what to do that now I just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then I kind of got like stagnant. And it wasn't causing any movement or any change, any kind of, growth in me until like I started, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna leave it up to God. Getting into my secret place and actually saying like, okay, well, if I'm not sure about this, then I'm just gonna, talk to Him about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves too of like what's the right choice. And I think it's in Psalms, but it says that you can plan out your ways, but the Lord's the one that establishes your steps. And as you abide in Him and He in you, it's like you're going to start doing the right things. And it's not supposed to be difficult, and that there's actually more grace whenever you're just walking in what the Lord has for you. It's not just like one make or break moment. It's like He actually turns everything for your good, and He points you to where you're going. It's not, well, this is the one plan I had for you and you have to do it. It's like, okay, you're seeking first like my kingdom and my face, and everything else will fall into place. And so I think that's just been a really big encouragement too, of like, whenever I feel like I'm getting stagnant, it's like, all I have to do is seek His face, and I will be in the way that He has for me.
Yeah, talking about having one plan, and if you don't do that, then you're a failure. I kind of gone through that here lately, because for a while I've been thinking like, hey, you're supposed to join the Air Force, that kind of thing, trying to work that in my mind instead of just saying, okay, taking it and praying about it in silence. I'll do that for a little while, and then I'll go out and like talk about it and try to be logical about it and things like that. And if I've found anything, it's that nothing to do with God is logical. He's supernatural. So that's not how that works. And then I'll try to take the passage you were just talking about, how God's gonna hold us up. I'll be like, well, He'll support me in that, and He'll give me the strength to do it, but I don't want to do it. And just having the thought process of like, hey, I hate this idea, and I let myself convince myself that this was a calling from God without actually asking like, hey, is it you that's telling me to do this? And I'm still trying to figure that out now, but it's like, I was in worship night here a while back, and I got this thought that came in my head as I'm sitting there in silence and just kind of having peace wash over me. And that's not really what I was like. That's always good, but I was asking for one thing, trying to figure something else out. And it's like, here, have this instead. And what it was is like, hey, I'm your father. I'm not your man. Like in that, like He's everything. He's our master and our father. But in that moment, it was like, see me as a father, not as a master. I'm not going to make you do this. It's like, you get to choose. And if you do whatever you do unto me, it'll be okay. Like, chill out. You're getting way too stressed over this. And that was really good for me, because now I've had a pretty good week since then. I said a couple weeks ago, but it was like last week. You know that.
Well, I know it causes also, like you said, a lot of stress. I think that's what the being causes. A lot of people are having like anxiety or leading to depression because they're like, okay, well, their plans didn't work out, and they're like, well, they get caught up in, they put so much, what do you call that? I can't speak. They just put a lot of effort into trying to make their plans come through, and then if it doesn't work out, they're like, well, what do they have left? And it sends a lot of people into kind of like the state of depression or anxiety, just being not kind of like, they don't know what to do with their lives after that. And another verse with that is Philippians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And like I was saying, it's just getting in your secret place and leaving it all up to Him, really trusting in Him. That's all I can say about that.
Guarding your mind is really important whenever you're trying to figure stuff like this out, because sometimes you do have callings that are given to you because it's time now, versus at other points in your life it's too early and you're overthinking it. You'll have these things given to you. It's like, okay, now you do need to start thinking about this a little bit, but just trust me in it. And you can do that really well if you're guarding your mind correctly. But if you're not, if you let any like shame or guilt come into it, it's like a little bit of a keyhole or pinhole or something where the enemy can get in and start trying to screw up what you're hearing from God. It's like one word will change in a sentence, then two words will change, and you'll just kind of let that in. It's because you did something and you felt guilty about it or shame about it or something like that. And whenever you start to think that you're not worthy of what's been handed to you, then what's been handed to you, you start to believe that it was something different, that you heard wrong, things like that. And that's really hard to dig out of or get rid of. You can do it, but it sucks.
Yeah.
And I feel like too, like that's always been Satan's game plan though, is let me change what they think they're hearing. Of like, even in the garden when it says like, who told you that? And it's like, oh, God told you that if you ate from this tree, like you'd surely die. And it's like, yeah, sure. But it's like, who told you that you were naked? Who told you? Like all these things. It's like these lies that we believe. And it all starts with just like the one compromise of doubting how good the Lord is too. And that like His word is completely true, and that we can trust it, and that we do know the voice of our shepherd. And so I think a lot of the time it's just like we get so consumed in the interpretation when the Lord's just calling us to obedience and not to fully grasp even what you were saying of like, nothing makes sense with the Lord because He is supernatural and like we're body, mind, and spirit. And sometimes He's speaking to our spirit and our hearts and our minds are unfruitful because it's like He's doing something, but He's also making a way that we could have never made in the first place. And that's why we have to lean on Him to begin with.
Yeah, I think that when you have that doubt, that's when you have to have, just like kind of like testing your faith, see how you're gonna stay. I can't. I lost my thought. How strong you're gonna stay in that? Like, a lot of times when I've had those doubts is when I saw the most breakthrough when I actually stuck through with it.
Yeah.
Is when I like noticed a lot more change. I'm like, okay, well, you know,
Yeah.
I could have just given in and been like, okay, well, this isn't gonna work out, and given up, but I wouldn't be here. Like in LA, for example, I had a lot of doubts, coming up to the few months approaching the start of LA, and I was like, honestly, I don't really want to go. I kind of feel like I have some things figured out, and I don't think it's gonna work out either way. But I didn't, and now I've learned so much after coming here. I've grown a lot. I've changed a lot of things. My mindset with dating, my mindset on a lot of biblical beliefs from our different classes we've had.
Yeah. I love one thing that we've learned too, as far as like the Lord's voice is always on the other side of like the hurt, and like how there's breakthrough that's awaiting if you just linger for a little bit, and how important it is whenever you're trying to build your life and whenever you're trying to answer the what ifs of like, I'm going to wait on the Lord because he will renew my strength. And even you were talking about like doubts, and I think of in James when it's talking about like if you want wisdom, and you can insert any fruit of the Spirit or anything from the Lord in that passage of like, if you want it, then ask for it, but have no doubt. Because if you have doubt, then it's like you're going to be shifting every which way and you're unstable in all of your thoughts. But just like how faithful the Lord is when you ask to like fill you to overflow.
Yeah.
I had something, but that car pulled up and I lost it. Maybe I'll come back to it later.
Yeah.
So since we're taking a break, the reason I started laughing is because Amia set her phone up right there and was like doing like a little TikTok or something. Like she was making a video. Okay.
That's fine. TikTok dances.
Would you want to go turn it on and then once she leaves? Or do you think it would affect the lighting?
I don't think it'll affect that much.
Okay.
But
anyway.
you sure?
Wait,
It look
which-
weird.
which
Are you
one?
going to edit out what just happened, or is it going to have the fact that the lights just turned up?
I'm
If
gonna
you
edit
leave
it
the
out.
last few minutes in, then it makes sense. But if it's just different all of a sudden, it might be better to turn those back on and then just remember to turn them
Yeah,
off.
I can remember to turn them off if you'd like.
Nah, it's all good. It's
Okay.
all good. All right, we'll continue.
Anyways, Brody, what were you saying?
I don't remember. That was the whole point.
Gotcha.
Well,
There was something there, but I lost it. So.
moving on. Another thing I wanted to touch on was how I kind of have these negative what ifs. Where they're like, what if they don't like me? What if I fail at this? What if I don't succeed? And that's kind of like, managing your thoughts. How they say, if you don't manage your thoughts, it's going to manage you. If you keep thinking those negative thoughts, it's going to overrun you. You're going to have a mindset of negativity. I can't speak. Negativity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of like no one ever thinks to ask the positive what ifs. Like, hey, what if I succeed? What if they do like me? What if I am, great at this and whatnot? And that's just, kind of like the seed that you plant or the seed that you water is what's going to grow. Like you're not going to try to water a, tomato plant and expect to get apples. And
You got to be able to switch your mindset on how God sees you before you can start thinking those thoughts. Because, like, if you're thinking that He doesn't completely love you, then you're not going to be able to love anything but yourself. You're not going to be able to think, what if I succeed? What if this person likes me? You're not going to be able to think those things because you don't like you. You don't think you're going to succeed because you're not seeing how the Father sees you. And you see people sometimes when they don't have good relationships with their mom or their dad, they'll have a lot harder time with that because they never had like a good example of what a healthy parental relationship is. And I know it's weird. We'd like to think of God as a father, and He's called the Father, but it is weird to try to think of Him as a parent. That's a bit different. It's like, wait, I know those technically mean the same thing, but also, because like he's always there for you. He's always wanting to help with like wounds. Like a dad, if you scrape your knee on the ground because you fall off a bike, slap a band. Well, he might rub dirt on it. Your mom's going to slap a Band-Aid on it. But God, when you have these relationships that break apart, or you have this wound that you didn't know about for a long time, and it festers or it pops out and comes into the open, He's there for that kind of stuff. He's a parent to us. We are brothers, heirs with Christ, co-heirs with Christ. And that's something that I had never read that passage until we got here, and was like, that's weird to think about. that you would be considered a brother or a sister with Christ instead of just like his followers, you know. Like, I know you still follow him just like a younger sibling will follow an older brother, but it was odd to just, I can't really explain the mindset shift that came to him. Like, wait, I'm a co-heir? That's just different. But it brings this, not pride, but this air of like, hey, I'm worth something. And when you start to think that, then you can start to see through God's eyes for who you are, for how he sees you. And you start reading his words specifically a little more, you know, just getting a better picture of who we are to him. Going back to what you were saying earlier, I know we probably wanted to flow, but I remember what I was going to say when you were talking about lingering and stuff, just practical advice, you know, the hustle and bustle of life. Sometimes you don't have 5 or 6 hours to sit there and linger. You don't have a few days to sit there and linger. But with me, when I don't have time to do that, if I'm really struggling with something, you know, I like how one of our teachers here, Josh Barnett, he says that you don't have to fast because we have the bridegroom. He's back, you know, so we don't have to fast. But fasting still helps a lot of times with me. It's like, hey, I don't have anything else I can give you right now, so I'm not going to eat so you know that I'm committed to this. I want to see what you have for me here. I want to break through whatever this is. This is the sacrifice I can do right now. So that's a real practical way to do that. Because fasting, you can do that whenever. If you can just take the tummy rumbling a little bit, you'll be fine, you know.
Yeah, I like, even with waiting on the Lord, it can look like sacrifice. It can look like, Lord, I'm putting my foot down. I'm standing for this because, you know, we're even told that if we're persistent before the Lord, like he will show up. He will answer us. Ask and keep asking, knock and keep knocking. Like, the door will be answered. But at the same time, like, getting to know, even as you were talking about with like the identity of being a son and a daughter and like growing more into that, it's like I'm just getting to spend time with my father and delighting in him and he in me. And like that's where he loves to fulfill like my desires even in that. So like in the waiting, it's not this like, okay, God, like I'm gonna get something from you, but it's like, man, the more I see how good you are, the more that like everything else is answered, because it kind of goes back into like this cyclical just rhythm of, okay, I want something, I seek after the Lord. I realize the thing that I wanted, it doesn't really matter anymore because the Lord was enough, but because he's so kind, then he gives me a thing I want, and then we move forward. And so you're like kind of hopping. And so just like in answering the what ifs and like wanting to think that they're positive and not just like the negative what ifs, that's like something the Lord's even been encouraging me in, is like, what if you just asked? Like, what if you believed that I was a good father that wanted to give you the desires of your heart? What if what you're asking for isn't selfish? And just realizing, because of our identity as sons and daughters, that he does delight to like meet us where we're at. And if you just live your life like that, like the hard moments, the mundane moments, they become hopeful again. And they become this place of life instead of dread. And just like getting to see that the Lord, he has plans that are way bigger than ours. And it's just pretty awesome. I'm loving where I'm at in life. And even though it's this time of waiting, this time of what if, he's like, but I'm still good in that too.
Yeah. Kind of, you know, supplying that a little bit is this verse I have is John 15:7-8. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. Kind of like you say, like you ask and it will be given, you know.
Yeah.
And even I think even in the moments where you think it's like mundane, or you know, life's not moving as fast as it usually does, that's like kind of like a resting period, I guess, like just to listen and kind of, you know, rest in the Lord, kind of take in more than you're doing, you know. So I feel like there's something like a teaching moment that you have to get out of, you know, that is either like patience or whatever it is. There's something you have to learn from that, you know.
I like the way that verse. I don't like the way it gets taken out of context, but the way that it gets taken out of context, a lot of times it's like you'll have people that are a little fresher in their walk, and they'll just read that. They're like, oh, well, why ain't I just getting whatever I want? You know, but you have to have your heart right with him. So if you find yourself asking for something consistently, like you can be consistent with something, asking it over and over again, and it's just not coming to pass. And the hard part about that is sometimes it's just that you got to stick with it longer. And then other times you're not right. You have to ask yourself, like you have to step back sometimes, like, okay, let me make sure that I'm asking out of the place where my heart and my mind are in alignment with him, so that this is his will that I'm asking for, and it's something he wants for me, and it's not just me being selfish. Now, if you step back, the answer is no, you're fine, and this is something he wants, then you just got to stick with it. It's going to suck, but you're going to have to stay there and wait. It's a lot more fulfilling when you get it. And he's like, I stuck this out. I did good, and I waited on him. And a lot of times, too, like in the process of asking for that, you have all these questions that you weren't asking, that you didn't know needed to be asked, and they're getting answered the whole way. Like you've got the one goal, and you've got a bunch of little tiny side quests on the way. So,
Side quest, man. What a process. Continue.
I kind of like what Paul says about how he's not impressed by, if someone just shows up to church or, he sees it for like 2-3 days or like a week or whatever it is. After seeing it consistently for years or, for a longer period of time, seeing you consistently, sacrifice and whatnot, and actually abiding in him for that long.
mm-hmm.
Oh, I got another verse.
Bible man out here.
Mm-hmm. Psalms 55:22. I feel like a preacher right now. Bible class.
Tell me with the Bible, man.
Cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. And, I really like that verse about, kind of like what I was saying, like if I'm struggling or anything, I'm going to go to him, go to my secret place and, reflect on that. And kind of this, even if I don't see change right away, I know that, something's good happening. I'm not going to give into it and be like, oh, well, life sucks. It is what it is. Like that saying that a lot of people kind of like, it is what it is. Yeah. I don't like that saying because I'm like, oh, because I know a lot of people, they also think, they go back to if something bad happens, they're like, well, why did God let this happen? Mm-hmm. He controls everything. Why did he let this happen? Instead of thinking that, in the Bible, kind of like what Paul was saying earlier, how he was saying that there's a, thief and he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And, he's also there doing works, trying to, get us further away from God. And,
Well, you got to think, like, he doesn't control everything. He gives us free will.
Yeah.
He has a guiding hand, like a father. Even a master, they might whip you back into shape, but they're still just telling you or showing you what to do, and you get a choice whether or not you're going to do it. So he's guiding it. So if it happens, it's not that God made it happen, it's that he allowed it to happen, because he's not going to just take hold and be like, well, you did it wrong, do it like this. That's not really how he plays out in life, So you got it. Thinking to the whole righteousness part, this year in LA, I don't know if it's always the same way, like if they kind of have set plans every year on what exactly they're going to hammer on. But this year, a big, like probably the main theme, if I had to pick one, has been them trying to get it in our heads, like, hey, you are righteous because you believe in him, because you have faith in him. You are the righteousness of Christ. You can't gain in righteousness. You can gain in righteous conduct. Is that what Josh says? Something like that.
Can't grow in righteousness.
Can't grow in righteousness. Yeah, I forget sometimes. But knowing that, like, that's saying, like, hey, you're always good with him. You might have to get better. If there's some stuff that you're missing, you gotta take that captive and make it your slave, make your body your slave, whatever, and then go forward. But also, there is the fact that you can always grow in righteous conduct, which means not all your conduct is righteous. Not everything's right, which means that he's not controlling it all, because everything he does is righteous. So anything that truly is done by God is the right thing. You can't question that. It's God. You're not going to understand him. You're not God. You're a person. You're around for maybe 100 years if you're lucky, and then you're gone.
Yeah, England. It's pretty old.
Dude, I lived to 100, then we got problems. I'll be like, Lord, it's okay. You can take me. But like, okay, so you're saying that you don't like the it is what it is type thing, but also just realizing that I am righteous, that I am seated with the Lord in the heavenlies, that I have this authority. Like, I kind of embrace my life of like, it is what it is, because we were talking about today how, you know, Jesus promised there's going to be hard things that you come in to contact with. Like, even whenever you're walking out your faith with fear and trembling, like there's going to be these times where, well, dang, here's another obstacle in my way. And it's because, like, if you operate from a place of I'm already victorious because Christ died and I died with him and we are resurrected together, I have victory over this moment. It's like, it's just another thing that I get to overcome, that I get to add into either like under my belt, or like a crown or whatever, jewel on my head, however you want to think about it. It's just another chance of me getting to say, like, look, Lord, I've trusted you and I'm going to conduct myself in a way that is worthy of the calling that you've placed on my life. And now I get to even just walk in this victory, and how God in his kindness, like, brings the glory on us, and we get to share with the fact of like, man, I'm more than a conqueror. And so, like, it is what it is. Keep going. Like, keep your head down, keep working, because you already have the victory, because you're already going to see that breakthrough, because your battles aren't against flesh and blood, but against spirit and principality. And so if the Lord has seated me in the heavenlies above all of these principalities, like, man, I'm already successful in all of my ways, because I like depend so heavily on the Lord. I'm going to be successful. And so even just, I don't know how I got here, but like knowing that it's always going to be good, and that we do go from glory to glory. And just knowing that we're sustained in every moment that we face, and it's always good.
I think it is what it is good to use whenever it's people who have already stepped into the, like, they're taking in the meat, not the milk. Like, they're not just children. Because whenever they're young in Christ, it's better to explain all of what you just said instead of just going, it's just life, buddy. It's just how it works. But if it's a mature Christian and they're having a hard time with it, it's like, hey, man, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like you just said, he told us that stuff like this is going to come about. So you need to kind of stand up, perk up a little bit, and get on with your life instead of being just kind of digging a hole and trying to go backwards. Like you're trying to revert to the milk of the word. No, don't do that. Okay. Take it as it is. And like Tim says, you know, take in the meat, spit out the bones, whatever's sucking in life, deal with it. You're a person. It's just, you're going to have to learn how to deal with these things. A lot of times in my life, you got to deal with it. A week or two later, somebody else is having to deal with it. Like, hey, I guess this is why I dealt with it, so I can help. Still wish I wouldn't have dealt with it, but at least I can be useful now. And just knowing that, like, whatever's happening to you, maybe it won't be, but maybe you can use that later on to help someone else. So it's like, just take it as it comes, you know, just go with the flow.
Yeah. We're all right, bottom line.
What's that song say? What doesn't kill me makes me strong.
Getting a little taller.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can cut that part out.
Personally, I'm not cultured, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I ain't
That's
doing
Kelly Clarkson, bro.
It's a joke. I know what the song is.
Oh. I was like, she's country, right?
But no, she's definitely not. Anyways, Josh.
I'm not doing cuts, by the way.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I just won't say anything weird.
They'll know that I'm an amazing singer.
Hey.
They will pause,
No,
skip
no,
10
no.
seconds. Keep going.
She's good at talking, but that whole singing thing ain't her.
Okay, yeah, I know. But, so we're approaching end of our time. So, thank you guys for being on my podcast. It was really nice having the two of you, or one of you. I guess you guys are kind of like the same person.
Oh,
but,
like brother.
Yeah. But this was fun. Thank you guys for coming out.
Well, thanks for having us, Josh.
This is my episode.
Sir.
Mr. President.
Mr. Brody.
Okay.
All right, I'm tired of you guys. Goodbye.
Goodbye.